9 o'clock. This is going to be an interesting game. I'll explain to you why I'm picking it later. But we got UNLV, which is at 0-3, traveling to number 22, top 25 team this week, Fresno State. Fresno State's sitting at 3-1, and normally, if you don't know, if you haven't been following my channel for a while, I do my predictions on who is technically available for the playoffs. So, well, the season starts off extremely rough because I've got to do every single game. Eventually, the games narrow it down. There's less games that are actually matter. And again, I'm only picking about 10, 12 games a week in college, and it's much more manageable. But Fresno State has already lost a game, which normally, in my eyes, would eliminate them from playoff contentions because they are Group of 5, normally one loss, Group of 5 teams. Like, there hasn't been a Group of 5 team that has ever made it. But you got to think a one-loss Group of 5 team does not have a phenomenal chance at making it. But I'll get to why I think Fresno State actually has a legitimate shot at making a playoff berth this year a little bit later. Fresno State's favored by 30.5 points in this game on CBS Sports Network. So UNLV started off the season with a heartbreaking loss against Eastern Washington, 35-33 loss against Eastern Washington. That was obviously a heartbreaker. It was very close. I think it went into multiple overtimes, but then they had a less close loss, 37-10 against then 37-10 loss against then number 23 Arizona State. And then they had, obviously, this weekend's loss against number 14 Iowa State. So, again, not the best team. Cameron Friel led the team in passing yards last week. He ended up going 8 of 13, threw for 67 yards and a pick. Again, when that's your starting, when that's the best quarterback stats you have to put up, obviously not the best week. Charles Williams. He did not have the best day on the ground, ended up having 19 carries for 42 yards. Giovanni Fallo Sr. ended up having like 4 receptions for 36 yards, and yes, he did lead the team in receiving receptions and receiving yards. So, yeah, not great. But Fresno State, on the other hand, has had a very impressive start to the season. They ended up having a 45-0 win over UConn, a 31-24 loss against then number 11 Oregon, but Oregon has then shot up the rankings to the 3rd overall team, and this was a Fresno State team that was leading in the fourth quarter. So Fresno State, in my opinion, this is not a loss that you should be looked on unfavorably. I think that's why I'm picking them for a game like this, because I still believe they're legitimate playoff contenders because of that. Their only loss being to a top 3 now, Oregon team that has looked phenomenal so far, and I don't think you can really blame them for that. Oregon can crawl into number 1, and Fresno State goes undefeated down the stretch. I don't know if you can blame the committee for trying to put in Fresno State here. Again, a lot of stuff would have to happen, but I think it'd be a pretty insane cause of events if we could end up seeing our first one-loss Group of 5 team. They followed that game up with a 63-10 win over Cal Poly, and then they ended up having the amazing squeaker of a game that ended up being one of the best games of the weekend, and I predicted perfectly if you want to go back and watch that video. They won that game 40-37 against number 13 UCLA. Obviously, they've dropped considerably since that time, but this was a very good UCLA team heading into that game, and a UCLA team that was possible playoff contenders. A lot of them were thinking, and that humbled them a little bit. Jake Hader, their quarterback, I don't know if he's going to be starting in this game. I don't know if it matters a whole lot considering how much UNLV sucks at this point. But Jake Hader did have an amazing game last week. Obviously, had the game-winning drive, 2 drives that really, the one that took the lead, the 3-point lead, and then the other team went and scored a touchdown. And then they were down by 4 points with like 55 seconds left, and he drove them 75 yards to get a touchdown and win that game. Jake Hader, those were his 2 touchdown passes, went 39-53, threw for 455 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Ronnie Rivers on the ground had a pretty solid day, 21 carries for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Jalen Cropper, their receiver, ended up having 14 receptions, 141 yards and a touchdown. So again, this Fresno State team is a legitimate threat in the Mountain West, and the Mountain West is looking like a really tough conference this year. So Fresno State can go undefeated in that conference. It can be an insane event, but Fresno State does have a shot at this playoff berth, in my opinion. See, I don't know if Hainer looked really hurt at the end of the last game, so I don't know if he's going to be healthy for this one. But I think even if you're playing your backup quarterback, UNLV just does not have enough anywhere on this roster to make me think that they are a legitimate contender this year at anything except for the prize for the worst college football team, which UConn and UMass are definitely giving them a run for this year, but UNLV is absolute trash. But obviously, I think Fresno State's a really good football team. I love the Bulldogs here. I'd take the spread and the Bulldogs to win.